Okay, so we're going to get into some actual 3D now. Before we've looked at doing um, isometric drawings, which are not really 3D, it's sort of faked out 3D. So let me take you into some 3D, which is exciting. We're going to work on a cube. And so the first thing you need to know about 3D is over here in the top right hand corner, where my mouse is moving around, you will see there's a north, west, east, south compass, and there's also what's called the view cube. And we're on the top view right now, which means we're looking at the top of an object, and so we can only see the x and y axes down here. So if you hover over the view cube, you'll see certain areas light up on it. What I want you to do is click the top between the east and the south. Okay, so this little tiny corner. Click there. If you don't click in the right place, it's okay. You can get to this point, okay? And this whole screen flipped so that it's on its side, so we now have a z-axis which pokes out at us, which gives us 3D. So we have x, y, and then z coming up. Okay, that's three-dimensional. You can also grab this north, east, west, south, and you can kind of turn it around, spin it, okay, so that you can get a different view. But you could click on these different faces, right and front, okay? But we're going to put it back to where it was before, all right? And I haven't shown you the 3D toolbar. So right now we've been using the drafting toolbar up here, and we've used annotation to do dimensions. But we're going to use the modeling toolbar, which is mostly what you would do for 3D functions. So, modeling toolbar, second row in, there's one called box. I'm going to show you what box does, and I'll show you a couple of these other ones. I'm going to click on box. Alright, and I'm going to turn on the snap grid, but none of the other ones we've been using, just the snap grid mostly. Okay, and I'm going to start one grid square out, so that's 0.5 out on the X and on the Y. And I'm going to click that corner, and the command is telling me to specify the other corner of the cube. Okay, we're making a cube here, so I'm making a 3 by 3, which is actually a 1.5 by 1.5. Click there, and then as I move up, you'll see that we're making a cube. It's a wire frame cube, so it doesn't look exactly like a cube. It looks more like a hexagon. But we're going to make this 1.5. Enter. Okay. So if I were to look at this, it would just look like a hexagon. But one thing I want to show you, if you go up here to the select tool, okay, and then go up here to the top left-hand corner, you'll see something called 2D wireframe. That's the view that we are in, the render view. And if you click there, you'll see some options for how to make it look differently. I want you to choose realistic, and you might have to wait a second, depending on how fast your computer is, and then you will see that this is actually a cube. If you hover over this, you'll notice that it will select the whole thing. So there's no selecting the individual lines. Okay, when you make it like this, you've made one object altogether. All right, you can split it up differently if you need to in the future, but we're not going to get into that right now. So I have a 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 cube, perfectly square, which is great. Now I can then flip this around, look at the front of it. I can look at the right, the top. Okay. Now, some things you need to know about working in 3D, because it does look really cool, but it gets to be really tricky really quickly. If I turn on the line tool at this point, all right, and I just have the grid snap on, I'm going to try to draw like a tic-tac-toe sign on this face of the cube, okay, which is really the front. But as you notice, as you go over the cube, you will see the view cube actually changes and relabels those as you are moving. But these X, Y, Z's don't change unless you force it to, which we're not going to do right now. So I want you to just try to draw an X, Y, Z, I'm sorry, 3 tic-tac-toe, pattern on the front of this cube like I'm doing here. Okay. Now, it may look like, you can see this white line very easily on that one, okay? And if I flip to the wireframe view, it looks like I've done that other line right there. It looks like it's there, but when I go to realistic, it's not there. The reason is because it's really not there. This is kind of an illusion here. If I go to wireframe again, and then I start moving this around, you'll see that that line, pretty cool, huh? That line actually was going a totally different direction than what I thought it was. So it really wasn't going where I thought it was going to go. So how do you draw on the surface? I'm going to undo that you want to draw on. I'm going to get rid of all those lines. All right, there's a little indicator of letting you know where you're drawing on. So if I hover on the face of this block, you can see that it's made this face have a dotted line around it. Okay, that means it's going to draw on this face. So now if I start to draw, with any luck, it draws on that face. Excellent. I'm so glad when it works out. And then I can do the same thing here. So I would indicate the face that you're going to draw on first, and then you'll have much less of an issue because, like I said, it's very simple to, as I showed you, draw on the wrong face without realizing that you are until you rotate the object and then you go, oh gosh, that's not where it's supposed to be. All right, so we have that kind of pattern. Now that's kind of cool. Looks a little bit like a Rubik's Cube, okay? But a Rubik's Cube really isn't like that. Not exactly, because then you have, lines over here, which we could just practice drawing some lines if you would like, okay? But like I said, if I hover over these with the Select tool, this is all one solid object, the cube, and then these lines are solid lines like this. It doesn't really allow me to grab this square, okay? Plus, a Rubik's Cube has a slight space in between those lines. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to undo until we get back to this point, okay? And what we're actually going to do is we're going to do a really funky thing with an array tool. An array is a special way of making copies in sort of a grid pattern. So you could take one rectangle, for example, on a 2D array and make it a series of 9 rectangles that look like a tic-tac-toe board, for example, a 3x3. So that way you don't have to copy, it's all aligned in a certain direction. So this is a really neat trick. You do have to do a little bit of math. This is a 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 cube, as I've said. Down here, way down on the toolbar, you'll see near the copy tool there's one called 3D Array. It actually looks a little like a Rubik's Cube. And if you click on 3D Array, it will say Select Object. We're going to select the cube, which is one object by itself. I'm going to hit Enter to verify that's what I've done. It says Enter Type of Array, and you have a rectangular or polar array option. Well, I'm going to go with rectangular because I know that it's rectangular. It's already set for R for rectangular, so I'm just going to hit Enter. And then it's going to ask me enter the number of rows. Okay, if we're making a Rubik's Cube, that's 3 by 3 by 3 little squares, right? So 3 rows, enter, 3 columns, enter, and 3 levels, enter. So if you think of rows, columns, and levels as X, Y's, and Z's, then you would have 9, right? Specify the distance between rows. Now this can be tricky. The cube, you have to include the width of the dimensions of the cube itself. So these cubes are 1.5 that we've made. So we want a little space in between. So we need those all to be 1.6. So I'm going to type in 1.6, enter, 1.6, enter, 1.6, enter. And when you push enter after this, it's going to do something really cool. And it's going to build a Rubik's Cube like magically. It's just awesome. All right, so now you'll get a better idea when you spin this sucker around what it looks like. It looks like this on the front, and we're back to this, okay? And the right obviously looks like that. Okay, so you get the idea. Now, a Rubik's Cube, if you actually look it up, because, in designing this project, I was trying to figure out the best way. We're not going to color the Rubik's Cube just because the time it takes to do it the right way is really actually not worth the time. But it got me interested in how Rubik's Cubes are made because I didn't know how these actual 9 cubes get connected. So I looked it up, and it's in your lesson. This is the patent drawings for the Rubik's Cube by a Hungarian inventor named Erno Rubik. and it was in 1977. And what a Rubik's Cube is, if you take it apart, is it's 9 cubes, but it's also they're kind of carved out on the insides with these connectors. But there's this like plus sign sort of cross-looking thing going in 2 different directions. So they're cylindrical parts that they twist around, is the point. So if we wanted to do that, I'm just going to pull back for a minute. I do want to show you some other tools, but there is a cylinder tool here. I'm going to click on cylinder, and then it's going to ask us for the center or of the base of the cylinder. So where would the circle middle be of the bottom of the cylinder? So I'm just going to make one beside this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, because this square is not centered on the grid, I'm going to turn the grid off, the snap mode grid, and I'm going to turn on this other thing here that says infer constraints, because I'm going to show you what that does in a minute. And I'm going to turn on object snap. Okay, I'm going to start on the midpoint of the middle one, and we're actually going to build this thing out to the side and then move it in. And I'm going to start there and hover for a second and then move. Nope, I'm not going to do that. Do I need polar tracking for that? Sorry. I think I got that right. Maybe not. Shoot. Alright, well, never mind. We're just going to do it out to the side here. So just a cylinder. We'll put the grid on because we are going to move it into place afterwards anyhow. And let's just do the center on the grid, and then the radius or the diameter, it's set for diameter. Let's just do a diameter of 1. Enter. Okay, which actually is too big, but that's alright. Well, we'll go back a step. U for undo. Nope. Okay, let's try that again. Cylinder, center point in the base. I'm going to call it, I probably have to turn off the snap mode and the infer mode and the object snap and the polar tracking. Turn all that stuff off. I'm going to say 0.5 for the diameter now. Okay, and then it's going to ask me how tall. I'm going to go with, let's just go with 3 for now. Let's go with 2. Enter. Oh, 2 is definitely not high enough. But that's okay because it lets me show you this other tool. Underneath the box tool, there's an extrude tool and a push-pull tool. We're going to go to press pull. Okay, I'm going to click it. And it's going to say click inside the bounded areas. That means like a face with edges. To press pull. So I would like this top surface to be taller. So I'm going to click here, and then you might have guessed already that I can push and pull this higher or lower, and I can type in an exact amount for that. Let's type in 2 for that. Enter. Okay. And what that does is that, notice that that did not make a copy of the object, it made it all one solid object. If you use your select tool, you can see that. Okay. There's a similar tool called the extrude tool. What we're going to do for the extrude tool is we're actually going to create a circle. Go back to the drafting tools for a minute and go to the circle tool, center radius, specify center point. I'm going to turn on the snap grid again, and I'm going to click in the middle there, and we made it, I believe, 0.5 diameter. Enter. Okay, and so we have a 2-dimensional circle. If you go back to the 3D modeling tools and click on extrude, you can click it. It will say select objects to extrude. Extrude means to pull them into 3 dimensions from a 2-dimensional thing. So I'm going to click the circle circumference, the outside of the circle, hit enter to let it know that I'm done selecting parts, and now I can pull it up. Okay. And I think if I have infer constraints on now, no, there's a tool I'm looking for, and I don't remember where it is. Oh, no, not quite that. That's okay. Yeah, there it is. So that would make those the same size, I believe. Let me check. Yes, it is. So I had used the object snap settings to snap it onto the center of this other cylinder here. Okay, so that gives you some idea about how to model in 3D. what would be a good thing to do is be able to figure out, there are, if you control click on the 3D object, there's object snap settings, but there's also a tab for 3D object snap. If you go there, you can play with some of these. They're turned off by default because it actually takes a lot of performance out of your computer, and this actually is a fairly complex object for our laptops to be working with. But don't turn all of these on. I would just try one or two. You have to click there for that to happen. But whoops, zoom out here. You will see there are some other options under how it's rendered up here, shaded and X-ray and all kinds of stuff. Some of them look very similar to the others. They're sketchy. It's supposed to look like an artist's sketch rendering of it. X-ray, you can sort of see through it, but you can see that it's semi-solid. Okay, so flipping between these may be helpful to you in trying to figure out what's the best way to work within this. This does look cool, but it's definitely gonna cause some issues in trying to get things in behind here. Let's see, what else is a good tool to show you for this one? Oh, under the box tool, if you click and hold, there are some other objects there, like cones, spheres, pyramids, wedges. Okay, sphere is kind of fun. Specify a center point. I'm just going to go way out here and just click somewhere. Alright, and then it just makes a sphere, which is really cool to look at, the geometry of a sphere. And then you have other options under there. A torus, by the way, looks like a donut. It's not a geometry term that people are familiar with often. So that gets you into 3D in a big way, actually. There's a lot going on there. So good luck with that. Post your Rubik's Cube. What might be fun, if you really want to drive yourself crazy, is try to rotate this cylinder so that it will actually intersect this other one. I found rotating it to be not much fun at all. So I would suggest using the tool that I just showed you, the object snap tool, the way that I showed you, where you can flip on the front face, and if you turn off the grid, snap grid, and you turn on polar tracking and object snap, you should be able to say hover over this midpoint, hover over this midpoint, and come to the middle. If I could wait long enough, I guess. Is it polar tracking? If I got the wrong one on? Object snap tracking, maybe? Maybe that's the one I wanted. Yeah, that must be it. There we go. Those green dotted lines, which are a little tricky. And I got my midpoint there. Okay, and then I could say I want to come out so far for that cylinder, so I'm going to say 1. No, I'm going to say 0.6. That sounds good. Enter. And then you can flip through the view cube while you're moving, so you can see that that comes through there. Okay, and then you could go a certain distance here. Infer constraints. Nope, not infer constraints. Polar tracking. Shoot. Okay, so then you can see, if you put it in 2D wireframe, you can see that it's in there. Okay. Now, obviously, I have done it in a way that is sticking too far out the back, but I've already given you enough tools to be able to fix that problem, because press pull you can use to push it in more even. Nope, that's not true. You can use stretch, I think it is. There we go. Stretch will do a similar thing. If you click there, it will select the whole object, enter, specify a base point. I'm going to use the center point here. And then just going to move it. Nope, that doesn't do it either. Well, okay. Not what I was thinking. Let me just go back one more. Can I extrude it backwards? Let's find out. I would like to extrude this object. Enter. Nope, that doesn't do that. So it must be, I swore that push-pull did it the last time I tried this. Realistic. I like that view. Let's do press-pull. Yeah, it did. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Anyway, so it's in there, and you can press-pull it in any of these. Okay? Any of these possible ways. So, play with that and try to build the inside of the Rubik's Cube. You do not have to be as detailed as this drawing, obviously, because there are springs and inner parts and all of that here. So, good luck.